In 1987, arguably one of the greatest Stanley Cup finals was ever played between the Philadelphia Flyers and the Edmonton Oilers. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Patrick Glenn, and this is my retrospective of the 1987 Stanley Cup Finals between the Philadelphia Flyers and the Edmonton Oilers. Last time we talked about the two teams and the history of how we got into this area of the last 2 years and the history of what the teams have done prior to that, and a little basis on who the teams were. Now we're going to talk about how they got to the finals. The Edmonton Oilers basically, this may be a shorter episode than the last one because I'm going to quickly get through how we got here. It may take a little longer on the Flyers because they had a longer road than the Oilers did. But let's talk about the Oilers. They came in, Smythe Division champions. They rolled through the playoffs. They only lost 2 games coming into the Stanley Cup Finals. They took care of the Los Angeles Kings 4-1 in the first round. They swept the Winnipeg Jets 4-0 in the second round, and they beat the Detroit Red Wings 4-1 in the conference finals to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. So arguably the Oilers were coming in hot. They only lost two games throughout the playoffs coming into this series. Contrast to the Flyers, they had a tougher road. They won the Pacific Division with a wonderful record. They're coming in hurt. They don't have they're coming in hurt. Ron Sutter's out. Dave Poulin is hampered by rib injuries, but Poulin's able to play the first round. He didn't get the rib injuries until the first round, but they open up against the New York Rangers, of course, because the Rangers finished 4th in the division. So the Flyers and the Rangers wind up playing in the first round, and the Flyers are stunned at home in Game 1 as the New York Rangers wind up taking Game 1 3-0. But the Flyers would rebound, and they would come back and smoke the Rangers 8-3. Back and forth in the series. They would wind up winning the series in 6 games on Madison Square Garden ice. So the Flyers get past the New York Rangers in the first round to shake those demons from the year previous. Their second round matchup is the other New York team as they play the New York Islanders, who are on the downtrend from their dynasty years. Flyers wind up taking 3 of the first 4 games, and they're up 3-1. And just like the Islanders did the round prior against the Capitals, the Islanders wound up coming back to tie the series at 3. We go to a Game 7, and the Flyers just play shutdown defense and beat the Islanders in Game 7. So the Flyers so far have played a grand total of 13 games in the playoffs through the first 2 rounds, compared to the Edmonton Oilers, who have played a grand total of 9 games. So 13 to 9 games, and it's even get tougher for the Flyers, as in the third round they wind up playing the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Montreal Canadiens. The Flyers win the first game in overtime. The Canadiens come up and wind up winning Game 2 on the Spectrum ice. Flyers take 2 from the Canadiens on Forum ice to take a 3-1 lead. Pelle Hecklund winds up getting a hat trick in Game 4 for the Flyers. So the Flyers are coming back to maybe to take the series in 5 against the Cup champs, defending champions, but Montreal winds up winning Game 5 on Spectrum ice. The Flyers really didn't play well at home throughout the playoffs. They did a lot of their winning on the road, and which is what you're going to need to do if you're going to win in the playoffs. You got to win on the road. I can't always rely on home games, but the Flyers really didn't play well at home throughout the playoffs in this year in '87. Montreal winds up winning Game 5 5-2. We go back to Game 6, and here's where things get interesting. All throughout the first 5 games of this series, 2 players from the Montreal Canadiens, Chris Nyland and Claude Lemieux, have decided to play a little gamesmanship with the Flyers. They would wait for the Flyers to get off the ice, and then they would wait for them to get off the ice, and they would take pucks and just throw them into the Flyers' empty net after warm-ups. Well, That's not sitting well with the Flyers. Okay, we go into Game 6, and Ed Hospodar and Chico Resch, they wind up staying on the ice longer than normal, waiting for Shane Corson. Shane Corson was another one. For Shane Corson, Chris Nyland, and Claude Lemieux to finally leave the ice. Well, when they do, Hospodar and Glenn Chico Resch, think that everything is perfectly normal. They can just go about their business, get back to the dressing room, listen to Mike Keenan's strategy for Game 6. Well, once Eddie and Chico start leaving, Chris Nyland and Claude Lemieux come back out on the ice. Well, Chico Resch and Eddie Hospodar had enough. They grabbed Nyland and they grabbed Claude Lemieux and they started fighting after the warm-ups. Not during the game. This is after the warm-ups. This is before the game starts that they're fighting. Guys, the word gets back to both dressing rooms. Guys are coming out, and except for the starting squad at this point in his career did not have a good record against the Flyers. He was not good against the Flyers. So Jean Perron, the coach of the Canadiens at the time, decided to start Hayward instead of Patrick Roy. Ron Hextall, the funny story about that is that once the word starts getting back to the locker rooms, that there's a brawl going, there's a fight going out there. Guys start coming out. Ron Hextall winds up getting locked into an equipment closet by Mike Keenan, and he says, "You're not going out there. We can't lose you," which was a smart move because Hexy would go out there and whoop somebody's ass because that's who Hexy was. He would fight. Just ask Chevrier from the New Jersey Devils if Hexy can fight. But word gets to the locker rooms. Guys start coming out there half dressed. Brian Prop's coming out. He's just got his warm up on. Doug Crossman comes out with just flip flops on. He could lose a toe. And Dave Brown's coming out with just his gray undershirt coming, and the guys are just fighting. I mean, there's a brawl before the game starts. I mean, it's one of the craziest things you'll ever see. If I can find, I'll probably put the link in the description of the brawl in the description here. If you guys want to check out the fight, it's one of the craziest things you will ever see in NHL history. To be honest with you, a brawl before the game happens in the playoffs, no less. So all that's done. The Flyers go down. They wind up winning Game 6. Dave Poulin winds up coming back. He's playing with a flak jacket. He's playing with broken ribs. That shows you the leadership of Dave Poulin. The Flyers wind up winning all 3 games on Forum ice. I don't think that's ever been done before. To my knowledge, that a team has come in and won all 3 games on Forum ice to win the Howard Montreal Forum to take a series. The Flyers wind up doing that. So the stage is set. We are set for Game 1, which I will discuss in the next one. So it's the Philadelphia Flyers and the Edmonton Oilers. First game is in Calgary, Alberta. Not Calgary, but Edmonton, Alberta. I'm going to get some flack from the Calgary fans. It's in Edmonton, Alberta for the Northlands Coliseum. The Flyers and the Edmonton Oilers, once again. So at this point, the Edmonton Oilers have played so far 14 games to the Flyers 19 games. So the Flyers they've had a longer, tougher road so far coming into this series. What we're going to discuss in the next episode, maybe in a couple days, maybe next week, I don't know when. I've been able to get to it today with my work schedule. So the Philadelphia Flyers have taken 6 games against the Rangers, 7 games against the Islanders, and 6 games against the Montreal Canadiens. To the Edmonton Oilers, 5 games against the Kings, 4 games against the Jets, and 5 games against the Detroit Red Wings. They have lost only 2 games coming into this. So the Flyers are they have a tougher road, and they're hampered by injuries. They lose Tim Kerr in the first round to a shoulder injury that would bother Tim Kerr into the next season, where he would only play about, I think, maybe 20 games the next season. He was done. And if Tim Kerr would have been healthy going into this final season and going into this finals and going into into this next year, he probably would have been a Hall of Famer. But Timmy Kerr is hurt going into this. Ron Sutter's finally back, but the Flyers they're hurt coming into this, and they're nicked up. I believe Mark Howe. I believe I'll get into it, but in game one, he winds up getting a Charlie horse in both his quads, both his legs. He winds up getting a Charlie horse, and he plays the finals with with Charlie horses in both of his legs. I mean, the Flyers are coming in hurt, and it's not an excuse. It's just that they're coming in hurt. They played more hockey than the Oilers, so nobody expected them to give the Oilers a fight. Everybody thought the Oilers, the Flyers had a nice run. They're going to wind up getting swept. We're going to wind up crowning the Oilers, uh, which winds up happening. But the way that this series and what I want to talk about is the way that this series goes is not how everybody expects. Everybody expects Edmonton just to roll over the Flyers. But the Flyers wind up giving the Edmonton Oilers a fight. And it gives Gretzky the reason why he said the greatest goaltender he ever played against was Ron Hextall. So we'll discuss game one on the next episode as the Philadelphia Flyers head to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada to take on the Edmonton Oilers in game one of the 1987 Stanley Cup Finals. We will talk about that. And if like, subscribe, share, comment in the section below if you're enjoying this. And as I always end my episodes from the late, great Gene Hart, good night, good hockey.